Hi, this is Drew Erickson talking about money, not math again, because I believe most people love money without realizing how often it doesn't work the same way as math. Today, I read an article on Patch.com titled Destry Witt on Retirement Planning for Millennials. And he goes through a few different points in this article that I think are important to not only highlight, but also respond to. So basically, he starts out by talking about how millennials seem to struggle financially more so than their predecessors due to substantial student debt, low wages because they're earlier in their careers, and inadequate financial education, which I think is applicable to not just millennials, but really all age categories, if that's how you want to describe them. So, and the biggest issue with that is even though we have the most information, I think it comes down to two things when it comes to lack of education or really good education. One, we live in an age where we have more information accessible than we ever have before because of the internet, but there's nothing really, there's not really a good way to know what information is good information because you can find anything you're looking for and you can find a lot of things you aren't looking for without realizing it. And at the end of the day, the internet doesn't know you personally and what your financial goals are and financial background is. So I think that's one big issue is that there's a lot of generalized information that isn't applicable to each individual. The second thing is I believe the financial planning industry as a whole has been teaching the same concepts for 100 years and not really updating and really what's the word, developing new strategies that will work more efficiently or learning from their past, so to say. Like I've said before, if you look at our world as and the way we live in it, I don't think there's almost anything that's the same as it was 20, 30 years ago, except for the financial planning industry. Everything else has evolved, but yet the financial planning industry is still trying to drill the same concepts into people's heads all the time, even though we can look at most people retiring today and see that traditional planning strategies aren't working as well as we hope they would. So moving on, he talks about the importance of emergency fund. And I completely agree with him here that emergency funds are extremely important. They aren't going to grow for you. They're not a wealth accumulation or retirement planning tool, but they are a protection tool in the sense that if you never know when you're going to have an unexpected life event, whether it's your car breaking down, something going wrong with your house, anyone who owns a house knows there's always updates or wanted remodels. Maybe your kid gets sick, whatever it is, emergency funds are important and having cash on hand. How much is really up to you, to a point, not up to you, but it determined on based off your life. And a lot of times a decent rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months expenses, but that can really come down to the person. It really takes more specific planning. He mentions saving 10 to 20% of your income to build an emergency fund. Though that would be awesome, that it would be a pretty hefty goal considering that doesn't account for wealth accumulation or retirement planning yet. So moving on, he talks about 401k contributions. And again, he makes a pretty good point where he recommends saving at a minimum of whatever your company is going to match because that's free money, and then from there determining what makes the most sense from you is the most important, because at the end of the day we have to understand your traditional 401k contributions are tax deferred and we have no control. So that means when you take the money out, you have no control over how much is actually yours because the government sets the tax rate, not you. Two, you can't touch that money until you're 59 and a half without tax penalties. And then once you're 70 and a half, the IRS tells you you have required minimum distributions that you have to take whether you want to or not. So there's not a whole lot of control with traditional 401k type plans, but there is that benefit of a free match from your employer. Then he talks about after the traditional 401k, looking at Roth IRA contributions and the advantages of paying your taxes up front rather than deferring the tax without control of what you'll pay later. And he talks about how there's a little bit more accessibility because with Roth IRA contributions, after 5 years, in many cases, you are able to take out your principal, just not the growth on your investments. So there's a little bit more advantage there compared to like a traditional 401k, but there's still some limitations around when and how you can use that money. And keep in mind, both your 401ks and your IRAs are most commonly invested in mutual funds or the stock market. Okay, and that's where the last point comes in that's kind of interesting. So the last point he says is build your net worth. So once you've built an emergency fund, once you've contributed to your 401k to get the match, and once you're contributing to your Roth IRA, you should then take the extra money that you have left to save and you should invest it in the stock market. So the interesting thing about that is what he fails to explain is your 401k and your IRAs are more than likely also invested in the stock market. So by just taking your extra money and putting it in the stock market again through a different vehicle, you're not really diversifying your risk. You're actually just putting more money into the same products or same, I guess, investment vehicle, just held differently from a tax perspective. So I think what's really important here that it isn't highlighted that we should really need to determine and figure out it when we're planning for our financial futures is, do we understand what's going to happen to our money if the market goes down and taxes go up? Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Do we have a clear idea of what's going to happen to our money if the market goes down and taxes go up? Because according to all the recommendations just made, if the market goes down, all of this person's money is going to be in the market outside their emergency fund. So are there other ways that we can save our money where it will grow without having the risk of going down when the market goes down too? Okay, so that's number one. Are there ways that we can plan with our money so that it grows without going down when the market goes down too, so that we actually are diversified? The second point that I think is really important that isn't highlighted here is, you're going to hear me say this more than anything else, what's more important? How much we're worth or how much our investments and our retirement planning pays us, right? So he talks about building your net worth, but does it really matter how much money we have if we don't understand how much that money is going to pay us in retirement? Okay, so we need to, when we're planning, is it more important to maximize how much our retirement plans pay us in retirement, or to only focus on how much they say they're worth? And keep in mind, when your money is invested in the market, what it's worth today doesn't mean anything unless you're pulling it out, because it's going to fluctuate tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. Whether it goes up or down is unpredictable. All right, so those are just some things. I think there's some good points highlighted in this article, but some really, really important points that aren't brought up, that I hope this conversation brings you value today and any day going forward. Please let me know what you think in the comments section. And if you think it's a valuable video or brought you value, please share with a friend. Thanks for taking the time to watch and have a great day. Bye.